Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a fantastic day so far. This is our first lecture here together. This is for Unit 1. This is our first bit of notes. So, welcome. I do want to go ahead and tell you a couple things before we really get started. First of all, you'll see in here that I have some text that's in black. And then I'm going to skip ahead. I have some text that's in red because normally, whenever we're in class, I'll tell you that I'll have you write what's in black and not write what's in red. So while you are taking these notes, or while you're listening to me, make sure you are taking notes and writing down what's in black. So, we are going to start American History 1 at the very beginning. The earliest Americans, we're going to start with Europeans coming over, claiming land for themselves, and let's just go ahead and jump right in. Now, starting with the earliest Americans, North America has been inhabited by humans for at least 16,000 years, 16,500 years. And as early as even the 1500s, early settlers and European thinkers have been interested in discovering how humans had come to populate North and South America. So, what's very interesting, and you'll see up here, hopefully you can follow where I'm pointing. You'll see up here where it says Beringia. This is actually today known as the Bering Strait. You would have learned about this in world history. And that entire region right there is oftentimes called Beringia. The Beringia land bridge is one of the pretty common theories of how humans came over from, if you look up there, what is now Siberia, but coming from Asia over here to North America. And so with this land bridge, basically they were chasing herds of game. They were trying to find food. And so what's interesting is they start the spread from up here, and then they spread downwards. And especially by 800 BCE, this is whenever you start to see people that start to disperse all throughout the Americas. So whenever people disperse, that means they spread out. And you really start to see various forms of cultures and groups of people form. Now, before we talk about Native American societies, one thing that I do want to make sure that you do remember from world history, and I'm sure that you did speak on this in civics and economics as well, is you need to make sure you know what a culture is. With these early Native American societies, they start to form their own unique cultures. And we'll be taking a look at how these change all throughout this class. So basically, a culture, this is the different beliefs, norms, traditions, and values of a group of people. So for beliefs, that should be a term that you are familiar with. So these are the things that you think to be true. You feel they are true. Norms, those are things that are usual, typical, or standard within your society. Whether that is shaking hands whenever you see someone, whenever you meet someone, saying hello, waving, those norms vary from different culture to culture and values of a group of people. So one thing that was unique to these different groups or these Native American societies was that they had no private land ownership. So it's not like they were building fences to close off where their land began and where it ended. They really, they shared things. They shared their land. Also, there was a close dependence on their environment. With these early Americans that made their way over, you have to wonder, why are the European nations wanted to explore? There are a lot of different reasons. So you talked about the Middle Ages in world history, and there are going to be some things here that are going to be a review for you. But after the Middle Ages, that time of a lot of really chaos. There were a lot of centralized nations that grew afterwards, and there was more structure within these nations. Also, think back to world history again whenever you learned about the Crusades. That was the series of religious wars whenever it was between the Seljuk Turks and the Christians, and they were trying to take back the Holy Land of Jerusalem. The series of 9 crusades, those holy wars. Um, and so, whenever people would travel and they would be fighting in these crusades, they would be traveling to different parts of the world over there. So, they would go from where they lived to a completely new place. And so, they found these different goods, whether it was a type of food, maybe a material they could use to make something, whether it's clothing or whatever have you. It created a thirst for different goods instead of being around the same things and continuing to have the same things. They were like, what else is really out there? Because whenever they started to get out of their own environment during the Crusades, they also started to wonder, well, what's beyond here even? So whenever whenever more lands are discovered, they are interested to see what other goods are over there too. And another reason why to explore, during the Renaissance, again, another world history review, these discoveries, they led to inventions that made long distance sailing possible. So you had things like the astrolabe. I found this picture down here. It's not an actual picture of what an astrolabe would look like, but I was having a hard time finding one that had free use. But this one shows what an astrolabe does. Basically, it could do pretty much anything for the time. It could measure latitude and longitude, what part of the sky is visible, and it could measure what time of day and night. So kind of used as a sundial. So it was really, really good for sailing, and it made it a lot easier. Also, I'm going to go to the next slide because I found a picture that I could use on here. This is the caravel. This is a small, highly maneuverable sailing ship that was developed around the 15th century by the Portuguese, which we're going to talk about them pretty soon. And this was used to explore along the West African coast into the Atlantic Ocean. If you can maneuver a large ship like this, it is very, very helpful. It makes your trips shorter and safer. So this was a huge advancement. And the last one was cartography improvements. Cartography, that's the drawing of maps. So it made things a lot more, like if they found a new land or wherever they were exploring, it was more accurate. Okay, so as far as early European exploration is concerned, you've probably, hopefully, all heard of the 3 G's before: God, gold, and glory. So for God, these conquistadors or these explorers, they wanted to spread the faith. They wanted to spread Christianity. They wanted to spread it to these new places. Gold. Some of these people really did believe that the streets would be paved with gold. Also, they would be making a lot of money. And then glory, they would be bringing glory not only to themselves and making a name for themselves, but also they would be bringing glory back to their country. Okay, so we're going to talk about just a couple of early explorers. We'll hit on some more later. First, we have Vasco da Gama. He sails around the Horn of Africa, and I'll move this in a second. Sorry. But this is his route down here. This is known as the Horn of Africa. And then you also have Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus, you've all learned about him since elementary school. And that doesn't stop here. So his idea, he wanted to find a shorter water route to Asia. And so he sails west and stumbles onto the Americas, basically. He takes those lands and he claims them for Spain. Unfortunately, he is a very, very controversial figure. He enslaves the native population of San Salvador. These people are treated terrible. And so whenever this happens, it opens the door for what's called the Columbian Exchange. this should also be a review for you from world history. The Columbian Exchange, that is the exchange of people, ideas, plants, animals, and diseases between the old and the new world. And I'll explain what I mean by diseases. And this is the link I was talking about. It shows you how there's a large group of people who want to remove Columbus Day, take it away as a holiday. And so, anyway, this is also a chart that shows how the native populations were devastated throughout this entire process because, unfortunately, their immune systems were not built up and they had no immunity to these different diseases that Europeans brought over to the New World. So whenever it was brought over, they died by the millions. They were wiped out. There was a group called the Taino people that 90% of their people were wiped out, whether it was mostly by disease, but also by being killed, whether it was by means of warfare and being enslaved. Okay, so here is a really good graphic to show you, not really a graphic, a picture, let me just be honest. But this picture shows you some things that were brought from the old world, and I want to make sure you understand the old world is considered Europe and even Africa as well, to the new world, the Americas. So from the old world to the new world, you have all kinds of things that are brought. Let's start in the good region. You have things like citrus fruits. You have oranges and lemons and such, onions, olives, turnips. Can't say I've ever had a turnip before, but some people like them. Grapes, bananas, coffee beans. Coffee beans are life-changing for most people. Peaches and pears, sugar cane, honeybees, grains. Like, could you imagine no bread, wheat for bread, rice, barley, oats, and then different livestock. What some people kind of don't think about is there were no cows, sheep, pigs, or horses. No horses at this point. And then on the negative side, you have this long list of diseases that were brought over. Smallpox, which was the one that was very destructive to these native populations. You have influenza, still obviously a big problem today, typhus, measles, malaria, diphtheria, whooping cough. These are all terrible, and these native populations were not prepared. They had no immunity built up whatsoever. And then let's go to something good. We have the good things brought over from the new world to the old world. You have squash, pumpkins, turkeys, sweet potatoes, peppers. Tobacco is one we're going to talk about later with the settlement of the new colonies and with Jamestown. You have pineapples, cacao, which makes, I'm going to pause, anybody? Not that you can really answer me right now, but chocolate, beans, vanilla, corn, which was a huge crop to come out of Mesoamerica, tomatoes, potatoes, and peanuts. All kinds of, there's some good things over here that came from the Columbian Exchange, but unfortunately, there are the bad things that come from it as well. Okay, so it wasn't long after that European nations start to colonize in this new world, or the Americas. And so what it means to colonize is to take control of the people, resources, and all those different things within another land. And so what ended up happening was once Spain was becoming pretty powerful, getting a lot of money, and things were going great, other countries really wanted a piece of the pie. So you have Portugal, they come in second, and they wanted some pieces of land. They start to have a scuffle of sorts. And what ends up happening is the Pope actually draws what's called a line of demarcation. And so he split the land that was owned between the Portuguese and the Spaniards, trying to make it fair because they were arguing about whose land was whose. And so what happened was he drew the line of demarcation. And so the Portuguese felt like they got the bad end of the deal. They felt like the Spaniards had gotten the good end of the deal because Portugal got the east of the line and the Spaniards got the west of the line. And the Portuguese felt that they had been cheated. And so the Portuguese king, King John II, he said that it was unfair and he prepared to go to war against the Spaniards. And so the Pope decided to push the line a little farther over. And so what ends up happening is the Portuguese get a little more land, the Spaniards, a little more that of their former land goes to Portuguese, and that's where the line stayed. Unfortunately, other European nations kind of ignored that treaty and they would try to take that land anyway. But what's interesting is if you take a look at the languages that are spoken by different groups or different nations today, the Brazilians, they actually speak Portuguese, and other Latin American countries speak Spanish. So that's pretty cool. All right. And so we're going to see other nations come forward and they are going to want to establish colonies in the New World, like the British, the French, the Dutch. And so we will get more into that later. And that's where we're going to leave off today.